I'm standing on a historic property where over 150 years ago, speculation is that actually there were lynchings and hangings that took place right with this tree. You know, when people are going to die, a lot of what's inside will come out. And in the Hebrew Christian scriptures, it says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth will speak. In other words, press the button, and you'll find out what's in a person. What are some of the last words of famous people? Well, I think it's interesting. Let's consider some of them today. How about P.T. Barnum, the showman and the huckster? As he was dying, he was concerned about what are the receipts at Madison Square Garden? In other words, money, what's happening. How about somebody like James Dean? Here was the modern, cool guy of his era, and at the age of 24, speeding in his Porsche, he died. But before he died, he said this. He said, I guess my fun days are over. And then how about this? Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud was an individual that was an atheist, had 15 jaw operations, was told to stop smoking, couldn't do it. He supposedly had all the answers to tell us, but he couldn't stop what he was doing to destroy himself. And he was grabbing onto his doctor in the room, and my dear sir, please, it's all torture, help me, somebody. He was in a desperate state. Nero commits suicide at 31. This man that burned Rome, and he's playing his fiddle. And imagine the arrogance before he dies. He says the world is losing a great artist. Can you believe that? How about other people? Just recently, there was a man that is one of the most famous designers of clothing in the world. His name is Alexander McQueen. And this is a guy that had offices in Milan and London and LA, and Madonna and Lady Gaga, they all went to this guy. But he killed himself, he hung himself, he gave himself to excess drugs and all this and a gay lifestyle. And then when his mom died, he just says, it's effing awful, and there's demons, and he just hung himself. It's tragic when you see these kind of ads, but again, it's a reflection of the kind of lives that people live. Now, on a humorous note, Conrad Hilton, the man that had for 60 years an international chain of hotels and founded it, he said before he died, do you have any words of wisdom? You know what he said? He said, yeah, remember to put the shower curtain in the tub. Now, how about others? In the Hebrew Christian Bible, there's a man in the Old Testament, Saul, and one in the New Testament, Saul. Saul in the Old Testament, before he died, he said, I played the fool and erred greatly. It was a suicide, a mess. But the towering figure of the New Testament was Saul, or Paul, that impacted the world with his writings and with his missionary efforts. And he said, I fought the good fight. I kept the faith. And he said, there's a crown of righteousness that's stored up for me. There's individuals that lived right, and they have that kind of triumphant note. Martin Luther King, imagine, the night before he dies, goes to a church, and he says, you know what? I've seen the promised land. I may not get in there, but he said, I'm happy. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Now, what would be your testimony at the end? Augustine, one of the great religious leaders of all time, said this, O God, thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in thee. There's a God who created us, and he calls us not to religion and dead rules, but to relationship. And it's through a relationship with God in the person of Jesus Christ, who when he was dying said, Father, forgive them. And then when he came back from the dead, he said, now go take the good news. The good news is you can have relationship with the living God. Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and have it in abundance.